In the center of Amsterdam, Holland, young Julie works as a nanny and sees one of the kids drawing a windmill. However, their father calls the girl and shows her Julie's passport, revealing that she is actually called Jennifer and is a refugee from Australia. The girl tries to explain herself, but the guy grabs her by the arm and says he's already told the police everything. Left with no choice, Jennifer throws a vase in his face and runs out of the house. Far away in the City Museum, Dr. Nicholas Cooper draws a replica of one of the paintings, which also shows a windmill. However, when he looks at another painting showing a doctor opening a patient's head, he feels uncomfortable and leaves. At the same moment, a French photographer called Ruby goes to a studio looking for a job. The studio boss says he needs images for his new project, and in a strange coincidence, sends Ruby to take pictures of windmills. The next morning, Jennifer wakes up from a nightmare where she sees a guy in the middle of a burning trailer. Apparently, this is a memory from the past, and the fire in the trailer has something to do with her younger brother, Danny. After this dream, the young woman finds herself in the middle of the street with no money and no place to sleep. To make matters worse, two officers show up and start interrogating the homeless people, demanding their papers. The young woman leaves without attracting any attention, and on the way comes across a tourist bus. With nowhere to go, she asks for help from Abe, the driver, who promptly offers to give her a lift on the journey. In yet another mysterious coincidence on this trip are Dr. Nicholas Cooper and the photographer Ruby. The other passengers are Douglas and his son Kurt Jackson, a British soldier, and Takashi, a university student from Japan. With everyone gathered, the driver announces that he is taking them to see one of the country's main tourist attractions, the legendary Dutch windmills. As soon as they arrive at one of them, Abe tells them more details of the story. And in the middle of the presentation, Jennifer hears strange voices in her mind. Frightened, she goes back to the bus and picks up a bottle of medicine, but ends up dropping everything on the floor. Dr. Cooper hands the bottle to the young woman and asks if she's okay, but she quickly changes the subject and asks about the drawings he's carrying. The doctor replies that although he chose medicine, he always wanted to be an artist but lost his inspiration some time ago. After the conversation, Jennifer sees Takashi trying to talk to Ruby, but the young man can only speak in his native language. Fortunately, Ruby is fluent in Japanese, as she has modeled for an advertising campaign in the country in the past. With all the passengers back on the bus, the driver announces that they have a long way to go to see the other sights of Holland. Halfway there, Jennifer falls asleep and has another nightmare once again involving the man inside the trailer. As it turns out, the guy is her father, and during her childhood, she suffered a lot at his hands, who used to beat her with his belt. This traumatic memory causes the young woman to wake up, and as she looks ahead, Jennifer has the impression of seeing her father crossing the road. She then asks the driver to stop and runs to check if her father has been run over, but finds the place completely deserted. All the passengers are confused by the girl's attitude, and things only get worse when the driver tries to start the bus but can't. Abe then goes out to fix it. After hours of waiting, he says it's best to wait until someone turns up. Meanwhile, Jackson says he has to be back in town by midnight and suggests looking for a village on the outskirts. Jennifer says she saw a windmill a few meters away, and the two decide to go there together to ask for help. Before leaving, Douglas and Abe give the young woman a coat and a flashlight. While waiting for the two to return, Dr. Nicholas hands his map to the driver and asks him to point out where they are. As soon as he shows it to him, the doctor realizes that something is wrong because according to the map, there are no windmills in this region. Back with the pair, Jennifer is curious about Jackson, as he was the only one who didn't get off the bus and remained silent throughout the trip. He then reveals that he is a soldier who has come on a trip with some friends to try and forget the traumas he experienced in the war. The two continue talking when suddenly Jackson sees a woman's shoe on the floor, and this triggers strange visions in his mind. He finds himself inside a room blindfolded and being guided by a woman. However, for no apparent reason, Jackson begins to attack her, who, despite trying to defend herself, is eliminated by the soldier. Seeing Jackson in a few days, Jennifer asks him what happened. But before he can answer, he is knocked to the ground by a mysterious man. Looking back, the soldier realizes that his legs have been removed by the individual who is wearing a mask and holding a scythe. Jackson screams in pain and despair, but the creature soon finishes him off, stomping on his head several times. Faced with this terrible scene, Jennifer desperately runs back to the bus and tries to tell the passengers what has happened, but she is so nervous that it only makes everyone even more confused. Dr. Cooper asks her to calm down, and knowing that she takes special medication, he suspects that the young woman is suffering from a mental disorder. However, Jennifer insists that she is not crazy and claims to have met a guy holding a scythe and seen him eliminate Jackson in front of her. She tries to show the place where the guy appeared, but when she looks out of the window, the masked man appears in the middle of the forest, leaving Jennifer in a panic. Shortly afterwards, a crow crashes through the bus window, causing the vehicle to become unbalanced and overturn into the lake. Luckily, everyone manages to get out in time, but Kurt ends up tripping on the floor and injuring his arm. The injury is more serious than it looks, and the young man says he has a condition that makes it difficult for blood to clot, and any injury can cause deep bleeding. Seeing his son in this situation, Douglas becomes enraged and accuses Jennifer of causing all this. Ruby tells everyone to calm down, and now that they can't get back on the bus, the group needs to find a place to spend the night. Douglas suggests going after a house or village, but Jennifer refuses as the creature is still on the loose. Nevertheless, the group continues on through the forest, and on the way, Takashi sees a dog on top of the hill and seems to recognize it from somewhere. The young student then goes after her while the rest of the passengers continue through the forest. After walking for a while, the group finds an old hut that could serve as a shelter for the rest of the night. Inside, Dr. Cooper asks Ruby to look for cloths to bandage Kurt's arm. She then brings a piece of clothing that mysteriously reminds the doctor of an incident that happened in the past. However, he believes it was just an impression and continues to treat the young man's wound. Afterwards, Douglas asks the driver what to do now, but Abe has no idea where they are. In addition, Jennifer can't find Takashi anywhere and suspects that he has lost his way in the forest. As she feared, the young student ends up in a remote part of the forest where he finds the dog next to a wheelchair. At the sight of the object, Takashi acts as if it belongs to a loved one and begins to cry as if overcome with remorse. Shortly afterwards, the monster with the scythe appears behind the young man, and holding the sharp weapon in his hands, he unleashes an attack. Back at the cabin, Abe finds several files in one of the cupboards about a miller called Hendrik. The document says that he would be eliminated in prison on charges of witchcraft and macabre pacts. This story is familiar to Dr. Cooper, who says he heard it in an old European legend. In it, it is said that a cursed miller made a diabolical pact and in return discovered the secret to keeping his mill always moving, even in the absence of wind. Legend has it that in the village where he lived, several residents were disappearing without a trace. One day they discovered that the miller was responsible for this, and so when he was inside the mill, the villagers set fire to the whole place. Finally, legend has it that even after being eliminated, Hendrik continues to torment the region, eliminating everyone who comes near his mill. Despite the sinister story, Dr. Cooper doesn't believe it and advises everyone to rest because at dawn, they will look for Takashi. The night passes, and Douglas can't contain his anger at the whole situation and continues to blame Jennifer for it. The girl can no longer stand the guy's complaints and leaves the cabin, but Dr. Cooper follows her, asking her to come back. The young woman can no longer stand everyone thinking she's crazy and again tells them that she saw the monster with the scythe. The doctor asks her to talk about it at dawn, but suddenly he starts acting strangely and goes alone into the forest. Shortly afterwards, Dr. Cooper sees a stretcher with a patient's body on it, completely covered by a cloth. As soon as he approaches, a young woman stands up, and the doctor immediately recognizes her as a patient who perished under his care. The doctor tries to justify himself, saying that it wasn't his fault, but he also admits that he was under the influence of certain substances when he saw the patient. Nearby, Jennifer goes to the doctor, but she sees him talking to himself, and there is no stretcher nearby. Dr. Cooper's hallucination continues until the patient puts her hand on his chest. In reality, however, it was the monster, with the scythe that was in front of him, and it struck him with its blade and left him seriously wounded. Dr. Cooper tries to call for help, and Jennifer can see the creature's destroyed face. The young woman screams in despair, but to her surprise, Takashi appears and covers her mouth before she can draw attention to the thing. The two then run back to the cabin while the monster finishes off the doctor with several blows from his sharp weapon. When they return inside, Jennifer tells everyone that the guy with the scythe is nearby and that he has also eliminated Dr. Cooper. However, Douglas still doesn't believe the girl and asks Abe to tie her up before anyone else gets hurt because of her. However, Takashi reveals that the girl is telling the truth and the scythe monster is real. According to him, the group is close to a portal to hell, which is located in the windmill. In addition, the guy who is chasing the group takes the souls of sinners through this portal so that they are punished with eternal suffering. Takashi was to be the next victim, but the creature spared his life when it saw him kneeling in front of the wheelchair. The young man explains that in the past he left his grandmother and she perished, making him feel responsible for the tragedy. So faced with a real sense of guilt and regret, the monster gave up on taking him. With this, Takashi believes that if all the members of the group genuinely repent for their sins, they will have a chance of survival. Even with all this explanation, Douglas still doesn't believe it and tells Abe to arrest Jennifer before she makes things worse. After that, everyone goes to sleep, but Jennifer wakes up when she hears a sound coming from the old radio in the cabin. Confused, she manages to free herself and leaves the place, only to find the same trailer that appears in her dreams. This vision reveals the tragic past of the young woman who, years before, lived in that same trailer together with her father and brother Danny. The man had been beating her since she was a child, and over time did the same to his son. To prevent Danny from suffering in the same way as her, Jennifer set fire to the trailer and locked the door, causing her father to be eliminated by the fire. The problem is that as well as his screams, she also heard her brother's cries for help, who was also hit by the fire and eliminated that day. Recalling this memory makes Jennifer wake up screaming, and she realizes that it was all just another nightmare. At that moment, Ruby tries to calm her down, and the young woman sees in the distance that the windmill is turning. This catches Douglas's attention, and he decides to call Abe so that they can go to the site together and ask the windmill owner for help. Before leaving, Jennifer asks him to let her go, but Douglas refuses for fear that the girl will do something to his son. As soon as his father leaves the cabin, Kurt asks Ruby if the story of the miller who hunts sinners is real. Ruby doesn't know how to answer, but she fears that she will be the next victim because in the recent past she also committed an unforgivable crime. When she was a model in Japan, she had a rival and eliminated the competition. She hired a criminal to destroy the model's face. Ruby had hoped that the contestant would give up her career, but the trauma was so great that her rival put an end to everything. It seems that everyone in the group has committed some grave sin and been drawn to that region, but Jennifer wonders why Kurt is there too. Time passes, and neither Douglas nor Abe has returned from the mill. What's more, the fire is starting to go down, so Ruby decides to collect some more wood from outside the hut. On her way out, she finds a red pool of blood, and when she looks at it, she sees her own younger reflection. Ruby begins to admire her appearance, but suddenly the image pulls out a knife and begins to destroy her own face, just like her rival. Ruby is frightened, and from inside the pool of water, the miller's arm appears, pulling her in and trying to eliminate her. She tries to get free, but the monster is stronger and pulls her body towards the puddle. Minutes later, Kurt realizes that Ruby is taking her time and goes to look for her along with Takushi. At the same time, Douglas and Abe finally find the mill, and inside it, they find the bodies of Jackson and Dr. Cooper. Their blood used to turn the mill. Seeing that Jennifer was right, the two return to the cabin, and Douglas apologizes for not believing the girl. He then unties her and says that the best thing to do is to run away, but Takushi stops him and shows him a drawing he made of the mill. Even though she doesn't understand the language, Jennifer believes that the young man is telling them to destroy the windmill. If they do this, the portal to hell will be closed, and everyone will be free of the Miller Hendrick. Douglas insists that it's just a legend, but Kurt confronts him, asking what sin his father committed to be in that place. He tries to justify himself, but soon reveals that after their divorce, his ex-wife promised to keep him away from their son, forever. Douglas didn't accept this, and without Kurt knowing, he eliminated her and took his son on a trip to Holland so that he wouldn't find out. Upon hearing everything, the young man cries with contempt for his father and runs away from the cabin, with Douglas going after him to try and make amends. Jennifer goes along and finds the young man hiding in a tree, but Douglas hears a voice similar to his son's and follows it into the forest. Seconds later, he finds a woman's purse inside as his ex-wife's cell phone with photos of her and Kurt. However, while going through the photos, Douglas sees images of himself attacking the young man's mother. The man ends up being distracted by these disturbing images and doesn't notice the miller approaching and using a rope. He begins to squeeze his neck. Just then, Jennifer is trying to calm Kurt down, who calls his mother, but she doesn't answer. Then a transmission starts on her cell phone screen, showing Douglas being attacked by the monster, who, using all his strength, removes the guy's head. Jennifer does her best to calm the young man down and promises to protect him no matter what. Meanwhile, Takushi searches the warehouse for something to set fire to the mill until he finds a hose and a tank of gasoline. He then asks Abe to help him get fuel for the bus, but to the young man's misfortune, the driver hits him in the stomach with a blade. It is then revealed that Abe is acting in cahoots with the miller and will not allow Takashi to spoil his plans, even though he is an innocent soul. Shortly afterwards, Jennifer and Kurt enter the cabin and ask the driver where Takashi is. However, the old man only says that the young man has run away, but first he left the tank in the hose to get gasoline and set fire to the windmill. Jennifer then takes the tank and goes to the bus to get as much gas as possible. After that, the three of them head towards the mill, with the young woman asking Kurt to stay outside as it's safer. She then goes inside with Abe and starts spraying the gasoline when she notices a red light coming from a passage in the ceiling. She tries to see what's inside, but is soon pulled up by her foot and hits her head on the step, leaving her bewildered. As soon as she regains consciousness, Jennifer sees the miller in front of her next to Abe. The old driver confesses that he is a faithful servant of the entity and that the young woman will be the next condemned soul to be taken by the monster. Now that she knows the whole truth, Jennifer tries to escape from the mill, but the miller grabs her and throws her into the field. Just then, Kurt hears the girl's screams and tries to help her, but is caught by Abe, who takes him into the mill. Outside, the creature throws the girl to the ground amidst a pile of human bones. Jennifer quickly grabs one of them to defend herself, but when she looks back, she sees her father, who begins to blame the girl for her younger brother losing his life. Furious, Jennifer uses the bone to attack her father, but soon realizes that it's all just another illusion. Before her, the miller Hendrik appears, scythe in hand, ready to eliminate the young woman forever. At the same time, inside the mill, Abe tells Kurt that even though he's not a sinner, the young man will have to be eliminated so as not to disrupt the miller's plans. However, Kurt sees a lighter on the ground, and in one swift movement, he lights it and throws it on the gasoline, starting a fire inside the mill. Just as Takushi had said, this causes the portal to close, and the body of the Hendrik miller begins to burn. With the monster destroyed, Jennifer runs to the mill to save Kurt and finds him being attacked by Abe. The guy then rushes to eliminate her, but Jennifer pulls a knife from her pocket and hits the man straight in the neck. The old man desperately tries to stop the bleeding, but Jennifer takes Kurt to the exit and leaves the old man inside. As soon as they manage to escape, the young woman realizes that the young man is unconscious and does her best to wake him up. After much effort, Kurt awakens, and the two are relieved to see the mill destroyed, indicating that they are now free of the Hendrik miller forever. Unfortunately, the monster appears next to the burning windmill and, using a hook attached to a chain, shoots Jennifer. The weapon hits the young woman straight in the face, and the miller pulls her away with all his might into the windmill. Kurt screams for the girl, but it's too late, and all he can do is watch as the huge structure collapses in flames. A few days later, in the center of Amsterdam, a tour bus pulls up on the street. From inside the bus comes Abe, who survived the fire with the help of the miller Hendrik and continues on his mission to attract new souls. Before long, new passengers begin to board the vehicle until a young traveler appears just before the bus leaves. To his misfortune, the driver lets him on, saying that there is always more room for new sinners. With all the passengers reunited, the bus heads towards the rebuilt windmill, where Miller Hendrik is waiting to take new souls to eternal punishment.